Ask any man what women fear the most and you'll hear the same answers. Betrayal, abandonment, loneliness. But that's just the surface. A decorated mask made of modern phrases. Beneath it lies something older, darker, quieter. A fear that shapes their every behavior, even when they don't understand it themselves. And that fear, brother, you won't find it in self-help books or empowerment speeches. Today I'm going to reveal it to you. Listen carefully. If you don't understand what truly terrifies a woman, you will never understand her decisions. You'll take her behavior personally when in reality it's biology acting in desperation, and that ignorance will cost you dearly. Broken relationships, lost dignity, vanished respect. What you're about to learn will hurt a little, but it will set you free forever. Machiavelli once wrote that men act more out of fear than out of love. But the same is true for women, only their fear is different, more elegant, more camouflaged. It doesn't take the shape of physical threat, but something far more cruel. The fear of becoming invisible. The fear of no longer being seen, of losing the only real currency they have in the relational market, relevance. This isn't an attack. It's not a criticism. It's a surgical dissection of what happens beneath the surface. Because if you don't understand this fear, you'll react badly to her tests, to her demands, to her emotional chaos. You'll think she's being irrational when in truth, she's fighting against a clock that never stops ticking. And the closer she gets to that invisible hour, the more her behaviors intensify. You think that's an exaggeration? Then tell me, why do so many successful, empowered women collapse emotionally when they feel they no longer attract the same attention? Why do they freeze their eggs at 35? Why are social networks filled with filters, poses, and constant validation? It's not narcissism, it's fear, a fear they don't even dare to name. Today, we're going deep. We're tearing the narrative apart, dismantling modern lies and exposing the truth no one dares to speak aloud. Not to destroy, but to understand. Not to judge, but to see clearly. If you dare to keep listening, I promise you one thing. You will never look at a woman the same way again. This isn't just psychology, it's survival. Most men don't understand women for one simple but devastating reason. They think women think like us. That's the root of the problem. The modern man projects his masculine psychology onto the feminine. He assumes that what would hurt him would also hurt her. If something would make a man happy, he assumes it would make her happy too. And that mistake, brother, is what leads men straight into emotional ruin. We as men value loyalty, logic, and consistency. If a woman loves us, we believe she always will. We think love is everything, that being good, present, and faithful is enough. But she's not playing the same game. She operates on a different system, one far more emotional, symbolic, and driven by an ancient anxiety that most men never truly understand. While you believe that giving her love and stability will secure her presence, she's evaluating something else entirely. Your ability to maintain her relevance. Not your tenderness, not your gestures, not your promises, but your strength, your status, your capacity to project her as someone still valuable in the eyes of the world. Because if she's with you but no one looks at her anymore, her anxiety ignites. This is the male blind spot. We believe her love mirrors ours, but it doesn't. Masculine love is born from commitment. Feminine love is born from admiration, and admiration is fragile. It cannot survive routine, weakness, insecurity, or stagnation. A man can love a woman even if she changes, ages, or carries flaws. But a woman cannot love a man who has stopped growing. That's why so many good men are rejected. Not because they're bad, but because they're harmless. They create no tension. They pose no challenge. They project no power. The modern man has been domesticated by a society that teaches him to be gentle, compliant, polite, and then acts surprised when he's replaced by someone who doesn't ask for permission to exist. Brother, history has been warning us. Machiavelli wrote, "It is far safer to be feared than loved if one cannot be both." And the same principle applies to attraction. If she doesn't respect you, your love means nothing. If you don't awaken in her a spark of tension, if you don't stir her survival instinct, you will become invisible. The tragedy is this. Men think they're being loving when in truth, they're being weak. They confuse their mission with empathy. But a woman is not searching for emotional reflection. She's searching for a pillar, someone who doesn't collapse when she begins to test, to push, to provoke, because she will, not out of malice, but out of instinct. She needs to know she's not with another grown boy, but with a complete man. If you fail to understand this, every argument, every emotional storm will feel unfair to you. You'll think she's crazy. You'll say she doesn't know what she wants. But the truth is, you don't know what she's measuring. She's testing your resistance. She's observing your composure. She's projecting her future with you based on how you handle chaos. And if every time there's tension, you collapse. If every time she gets emotional, you get worse. If every time there's doubt you start begging, you've already lost. Because the man who kneels before drama does not calm her. He alarms her. And the one who over-explains reveals only one thing: weakness. The man who seeks validation becomes disposable. The fatal mistake of the modern man is not that he loves, it's that he loves without strength. He believes love is enough, when in truth, the deepest fear of a woman is not loneliness, not betrayal, not even abandonment. It's something far more cruel, more humiliating, more devastating: irrelevance. That is the real silent enemy that lives in her unconscious mind, shaping much of her behavior. And it's not her fault, it's biology. It's history written on skin and genetic memory. For thousands of years, a woman without perceived value was a woman cast aside. One who could no longer negotiate protection, resources, or safety. When her fertility faded, when her beauty withered, when a younger woman appeared, she became a burden, a shadow. The tribe stopped looking at her. The clan stopped protecting her. Her existence stood on the edge of the abyss, and that fear still lingers, buried, but alive. Even today, with skyscrapers, Wi-Fi, and empowerment hashtags, irrelevance still means social death. It means disappearance. And nothing terrifies a woman more than to stop being seen. Because in a man's gaze, she finds her mirror, her confirmation of existence. When she no longer receives masculine attention, she begins to question her own worth. That's why validation becomes addictive. It's not vanity, it's survival. Every like, every compliment, every "you're beautiful" is a small victory against the abyss of oblivion. Look closely. Social media isn't just a platform. It's a battlefield where feminine relevance is measured in real time. The more likes, the more validation. The more followers, the more power. It's no coincidence that women dominate these spaces. They are the digital manifestation of a biological need to keep being seen, desired, and chosen. And what happens when she feels that power slipping away? Panic. It doesn't matter how successful she is professionally. It doesn't matter how many degrees she has, how much financial independence she boasts, or how loudly she preaches self-love. If one day she looks in the mirror and feels she can no longer compete with a 25-year-old, her world begins to crack. Because the clock does not forgive, and she knows it. That's why many women secretly hate birthdays. That's why the makeup, the surgeries, the filters. That's why phrases like, "I feel invisible," echo so often among women over 35. It's not drama, it's fear. Fear of no longer being chosen in a market where her value is tied to youth, fertility, and beauty. And this isn't about blaming them. It's about understanding what operates beneath. Female psychology was sculpted by the need to be chosen. That is her evolutionary strategy. While a man gains power with time, a woman gradually loses it. And that creates a brutal collision between modern narratives and her biology, because they told her she had time, but her body whispers otherwise. Machiavelli would say, "The woman who ignores her own temporality loses the war without ever fighting, because what is not accepted cannot be controlled." And many women today are losing that internal war, the one between what they desire and what they biologically need. They want independence but also validation. They want freedom but also protection. And their fear of being alone is not the real fear. The true terror is being alone because no one wants to choose them anymore. Now understand this. When a woman feels irrelevant, she changes. She becomes more intense, more demanding, more volatile. She starts testing her partner more often, asking for more attention, more commitment, more signs of safety, because her internal system is on red alert. It's asking, am I still valuable? Am I still desired? Do I still have power in this relationship? And if the man doesn't understand what's happening, he reacts poorly. He gets frustrated, calls her dramatic, or ignores her. But that only feeds her terror, because in her mind, every reaction of yours confirms that she's losing the battle. Male silence doesn't calm her. It drowns her. Indifference doesn't strengthen her. It destroys her. And here comes the most Machiavellian truth of all. The more desperate she feels, the more likely she is to turn to control mechanisms. Drama, manipulation, victimhood, even hypersexualization, not out of malice, but out of fear. Because in her mind, the only way not to disappear is to make you react, even through conflict. That's why a woman can start a meaningless fight just to see if you still care. She can provoke you, challenge you, demean you, all for one reason: to prove she still has power over you. Because if she can no longer move you, if she can no longer make you lose your composure, then in her mind, she no longer matters. And that realization destroys her. This fear isn't something women admit. They don't talk about it. They don't even acknowledge it among themselves, but they feel it. They live it. Every decision they make in their romantic lives, on social media, in how they speak, dress, and move is a way to escape that fear. The wisest among them accept it and act with strategy. The rest deny it and exhaust themselves in contradiction. That's why you must understand this, not to manipulate but to avoid becoming a victim of the game. When you realize that a woman acts not out of malice but out of fear, you stop taking things personally. And when you stop reacting emotionally, you become what she respects the most: a man who understands the game but is not ruled by it. The feminine fear of irrelevance is the engine behind 90% of her contradictory behavior. It explains her obsession with appearance, her relational anxiety, her constant search for attention. And once you see it, brother, you can never unsee it. It's like X-ray vision over the feminine psyche. That is her Achilles heel and her deepest wound. Understand it and you'll never be naive again. It also explains why so many women seem to change drastically between the ages of 28 and 35. It's not that they suddenly transform. It's that they begin to feel their margin shrinking. Biology, that silent, merciless force, starts pressing harder. What they once ignored becomes urgent. What they once postponed turns into anxiety. It's when many enter a kind of existential crisis mode, though they rarely call it that. They begin seeking stability, not out of desire, but out of urgency. Romance is replaced by calculation, love by strategy. Because deep down, though they never say it aloud, they know the game is closing. Their peak of power is fading. Watch how their social circles shift too. Many start distancing themselves from single friends, from nightlife and chaos, and surround themselves instead with women who have partners or children. Why? Because the fear of being alone is not truly about loneliness. It's about the social mirror that reflects one unbearable truth: she was not chosen. That reflection is devastating. It's living proof of her lost power, and the world knows it. That's why advertising is ruthless. Cosmetic brands, fashion, health, even self-development industries, they all target that age range with surgical precision. They sell youth. They sell beauty. They sell promises of emotional eternity. But what they're really selling is an illusion of control over the passage of time. Because a woman's deepest fear is not aging. It's aging without ever being validated, without ever being chosen while she still could have been. Machiavelli once said that the prudent man acts according to the times. But what happens when the times are no longer in your favor? For a woman, that means one of two things: to adapt quickly or to deny reality. And many choose denial. They buy into the comforting narrative that there will always be time, that they will always be desirable, that they will always remain relevant. But the body doesn't listen to speeches. The body feels the clock. And when that ticking begins to hurt, fear transforms into hysteria. And that hysteria, when misunderstood, destroys relationships. But when understood, it can be controlled. That's what separates an ordinary man from a strategic man. The ordinary man reacts to the storm with anger. The strategic man responds with structure. He doesn't argue with feminine fear. He contains it. He doesn't empower it, but he doesn't ignore it either. He understands it and acts with clarity. But there's another detail even quieter yet just as powerful. What happens when, despite all her efforts, a woman still fails to regain attention? A darker form of fear appears. She doesn't just feel invisible, she feels replaced. And to be replaced is not merely to lose space, it's to lose identity. This fear can drive her to sabotage her own relationships or others, to criticize younger women under moral disguises, or to adopt extreme ideologies as a form of emotional rebellion. But beneath it all, there is no malice, only pain. Pain for not understanding the rules of the game in time. Pain for trusting a system that never prepared her to lose power. And so lament disguises itself as defiance. When she says, "I no longer believe in men," what she's really saying is, "I can no longer compete." That's why understanding her fear is not surrendering to it. It's seeing it strategically and choosing to remain firm. Because if you can't see this pattern, you'll react like every other man, with anger, with frustration, with confusion. And the confused man, brother, always loses. Now that you understand the true feminine fear, you must learn to recognize how it manifests. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't speak clearly. It hides behind behaviors that seem exaggerated, emotional, even irrational. But they're not. They are desperate attempts not to disappear. The first manifestation is constant validation. If she doesn't receive attention, she collapses. It's not ego, it's biology. That like you see as just a click is oxygen to her. Every reaction online, every glance on the street, every compliment reminds her that she still exists, that she is still seen, that she still holds the power of attraction. That's why a woman can have a relationship, a successful career, and apparent stability, yet still feel empty if she no longer receives masculine attention. Because in her unconscious mind, that means she no longer holds value in the marketplace. No matter how much she insists it doesn't matter, if she's not desired, something inside her panics, and that panic gives birth to behavior. The second manifestation is constant testing. When a woman starts creating conflict out of nowhere, questioning you without reason, she's not being capricious. She's testing you. Testing whether she still has influence over you, whether you still feel something for her, whether you still see her. Because if you react strongly, she relaxes. He still cares. I still have power. But if you don't react, her fear spikes. He doesn't care anymore. Then comes hypersexualization. The use of the body as a tool of control, not always conscious, but profoundly effective. Posting provocative photos, wearing attention-grabbing clothes, dropping calculated insinuations. These are not mere acts of flirtation. They are biological strategies to regain visibility. Because when she feels herself disappearing, the only thing she can do is show more. More skin, more curves, more invitation. And when that strategy stops working, fear mutates into rage. That's why many women attack or criticize younger ones. That's why rivalry hides beneath the mask of feminism. Because when a woman loses attention, she doesn't always attack the system. She attacks the ones who still have it. The fear of irrelevance breeds resentment toward those who still shine. The fourth manifestation is emotional volatility, sudden mood swings, tears without reason, bursts of anger. These are not signs of madness. They are biological reactions to the stress of losing control. Because when her body tells her time is running out and the world no longer responds as it once did, her reality begins to shake. And that's when she explodes. If you don't understand this, you'll think she's crazy. But she isn't crazy. She's at war with time. The fifth manifestation is drama as a tool of control. Arguments, complaints, long silences, all of it. Methods to keep your attention, to test your strength, to reclaim control. Because if she can't control the passage of time, she will try to control your reaction. And if she can make you lose control, she feels that she still has power. Now you begin to see the pattern. It's not malice, it's fear transformed into unconscious strategy. Because when a woman feels her relevance slipping away, she doesn't ask for help with words. She sends signals, disguised and desperate, tests, conflicts, displays. All of it echoes the same silent cry. Do I still matter to you? Do I still matter to the world? And here comes the most important truth. Most men fail these tests. They see them as attacks, not as symptoms. They react with anger, with logic, with explanations, never realizing they're being evaluated, not as partners, but as support systems, as the emotional spine of the relationship. And if you fail that evaluation, she loses respect. And when respect is gone, love collapses. Because a woman's respect is not earned with flowers or promises. It's earned with emotional stability under pressure, with leadership in chaos, with the ability to read the code behind the drama. That, brother, is what separates the men who survive emotionally from those who are crushed by relationships they never understood. You'll notice another pattern too. The backup plan, not always visible but always present. Women who, even while in a relationship, keep old friendships alive, maintain loyal followers or exes hovering in the background. Why? Because if their fear becomes real, if their relevance fades, they need an exit, a bridge, an option. Not out of betrayal, but out of survival. It's the same thing a man would do if he knew he was about to lose his job. He'd start looking for opportunities before being fired. That's hypergamy misunderstood. It's not greed. It's biology on high alert. I must be with the best I can get before my value declines. That's the question that consumes her from within. And if the answer is no, her behavior begins to shift. Machiavelli would say, "The woman who anticipates contempt strikes first." And that's exactly what many do when they feel a man no longer values them. They provoke him, they confront him, they destabilize him. Because if they can no longer inspire admiration, they prefer to create conflict, since conflict at least makes them visible. And here lies the great irony. Most men respond with more affection. They believe that if they love her harder, give more, sacrifice more, she'll calm down, but she doesn't. She becomes more restless. Because in her emotional language, that excess of devotion reads as desperation. And desperation doesn't attract. It repels. You confirm that you have no other options, that she's secured you. And when a man becomes secured, he stops being a prize and turns into a burden. All of this may sound complex, but at its core, it's simple. She doesn't want to control you for pleasure. She wants to feel she still has influence. Because if she can influence you, she hasn't disappeared. If she can make you feel, she's still someone. That's the female emotional addiction, not to love, but to importance. That fear of irrelevance shapes how she talks, how she dresses, how she argues, how she loves. It's present every single day, even if she never says it aloud, even if she never admits it. It's there when she says she doesn't need anyone, yet checks obsessively who's watching her. It's there when she declares she loves herself, yet collapses when the attention fades. Understanding this doesn't make you cruel. It makes you lucid because you stop reacting like a boy and start responding like a strategist. And when you respond with clarity without losing yourself in emotional theater, you become something rare, a man who understands. And a man who understands is a dangerous man. Now there's another pattern most men never notice, the use of silence. Yes, silence. When a woman feels invisible, she doesn't always scream. Sometimes she withdraws. She becomes quiet. But that silence isn't peace. It's punishment. It's a test. A way to measure if you still care, if you notice her absence, if you'll do something to restore connection. And if you don't, her conclusion is brutal. I no longer matter. I no longer have value. I've already disappeared for him. That's why when she goes silent for long stretches, don't ignore it. Don't fill it with rational excuses. Read it for what it is. A final emotional SOS. Not for you to save her, but for you to see her. Because in that moment, more than love, she's begging for recognition. She's pleading not to become invisible to you. And if you don't understand this, If you fail to decode it, you're no longer in the relationship, you're already outside of it. You just don't know it yet. And there's one more manifestation, subtle but equally intense constant comparison. Not just with other women, but with past versions of herself. When a woman says, "I don't look like I used to," she's not asking for shallow reassurance. She's seeking confirmation that she's still valuable. Because the mirror for her isn't just an object, it's an existential battlefield. Constant changes in style, crises around birthdays, anxiety during photo shoots, none of it is vanity. It's a desperate reaction to the idea that her time is running out. And if you as a man don't understand this, you might invalidate a fear that feels existential to her. That's why the man who observes instead of reacting, who contains instead of collapsing, becomes an anomaly, a lighthouse in the storm of emotional chaos. And that kind of man, brother, is rare. Modern society sold women a brilliant script on the surface, but one deeply incoherent at its core. It told her she could have everything without giving anything up, that she could live as if time didn't matter, that external validation was shallow and that self-love was enough. It told her she could postpone love, motherhood, and commitment, and that when she was finally ready, the world would still be waiting. But biology makes no pacts with ideology. It doesn't answer to hashtags. It doesn't wait. And what we see today is not empowerment. It's collapse. Women emotionally exhausted, internally confused, externally frustrated, because what they feel doesn't match what they were told they should feel. They were promised their value didn't depend on appearance, yet every algorithm punishes them the moment they are no longer beautiful. They were told happiness would come from professional success, but the data says otherwise. More anxiety, more depression, more existential crisis. And here lies the paradox. The more power they gain, the deeper the emotional void becomes. Why? Because the modern script pulls them away from their evolutionary design. For millennia, they were wired to seek protection, connection, family, but today they're told those things are oppression, that the desire to be chosen is weakness, that the need to be seen is insecurity. And so they go to war against themselves. They no longer know if wearing makeup is freedom or submission, if wanting a partner is love or dependence, if desiring a child is instinct or patriarchal manipulation. They live trapped in a storm of contradictions. And that storm, brother, is not gentle. It's brutal. Because it's not just mental, it's hormonal, visceral, deeply emotional. That's why so many women who publicly defend radical feminism privately cry for not feeling loved. That's why you see social media pages filled with quotes about self-sufficiency mixed with posts that beg for attention. That's why those who speak the loudest about independence often suffer the most from loneliness, because the character they project doesn't match the woman they feel they truly are. And then the fracture appears, a split between image and essence, between who they think they should be and what they truly desire. And when that division grows too wide, the system collapses. What was once simple to be desired to be chosen to build a family is now an identity crisis. Machiavelli would say, "He who acts against his own nature ends up destroying himself." And that is what many live today. Not because they are evil, not because they are wrong, but because they are fighting against a programming they never chose yet cannot ignore. And the result of that inner war is visible everywhere, in how they speak, in how they love, in how they dress, and in how they relate to other women. Competition is fierce but must be denied. The desire for connection is real, but must be disguised. The need for admiration is deep but must be hidden. And that double emotional life takes a heavy toll. So what does the modern man do in the face of this? Nothing. He watches. He suffers. He gets confused. He tries to please, to be more empathetic, more understanding. But he doesn't realize he's standing before an inner conflict that he cannot fix. A conflict that cannot be healed with love, with patience, or with logic. Because the problem is not in the relationship. It's in the dissonance between her biology and her narrative. And when that inner conflict finds no exit, it turns outward into hostility toward men, toward other women, and eventually toward herself. That's when phrases begin to appear. All men are the same. I don't need anyone. I'd rather be alone. Not because they truly believe it, but because they're protecting themselves from a world that no longer gives coherent answers. Modern feminism promised them freedom but delivered anxiety. It offered them independence but took away direction. It told them to stop seeking external validation but never explained how to fill the emptiness without it. And now many don't know who they are, what they want, or why they feel what they feel. And here comes the hardest truth. When they can no longer maintain the facade, when the contradiction consumes them, they start searching for someone who understands, but they don't look for the man who was kind, available, and patient. They look for the one who remained firm, the one who stayed clear, stable, unmoved, because that man radiates emotional safety when everything else around her collapses. That is the great secret few men ever understand. When a woman doesn't know who she is, she looks for a man who knows who he is. Her chaos seeks structure. Her insecurity seeks containment. Her fear seeks direction. And that is the role of the man who understands the game. Not to control her, but to not collapse with her. Not to save her, but to remain standing while she rebuilds herself. Because if you fall too, then you are no longer useful to her. Then you become just another man who needs to be rescued, and she already has enough with her own internal war. This psychological collapse is the direct result of decades of well-intentioned lies. It wasn't born from malice, but from ignorance, from the belief that nature could be reinvented without consequences. But the consequences came emotional, sexual, social, and there is no going back. And the man who doesn't see this, who still expects coherence from a psyche, torn apart by contradictions, is destined to be frustrated because he's not dealing with a rational woman. He's dealing with a wounded psyche, one crushed by years of impossible expectations. On one hand, she's told she deserves everything. On the other, she's told she must earn it alone. She's told to love herself as she is, and simultaneously to remain young, beautiful, desirable. The only way to survive that storm is to build an unshakable identity. And the man who understands this stops competing with feminine chaos and begins to complement it with masculine structure. Not from arrogance, but from understanding. Because this psychological collapse cannot be avoided. It can only be navigated. But brother, in the midst of that collapse, some women turn to spirituality not as deep faith, but as emotional refuge. They move toward yoga, crystals, tarot, astrology. Not for mystical connection, but because those practices offer a narrative, an illusion of control. When real control has slipped through their hands, they search for answers wherever ritual exists. Because ritual soothes when reality overwhelms. This is not mockery. It's emotional necessity. It's the soul's attempt to hold on to something when everything else is falling apart. And the man who doesn't mock this, the man who understands without despising, becomes a pillar in the midst of her internal chaos. Brother, now you know the fear no one speaks of. The true feminine fear is not loneliness, not abandonment, not betrayal. It's irrelevance. It's the terror of no longer being seen, of no longer mattering, of a world and men that stop reacting to her presence. And now everything that once seemed confusing, exaggerated, contradictory, suddenly makes sense. Because behind every drama, every test, every plea for attention, there's only one silent question. Do I still have value? And here's the brutal truth. Most men never see it. They get angry. They get frustrated. They get lost. They react instead of interpreting. They yell when they should observe. They beg when they should lead. And that's why they lose, because they expect logic where there is ancestral emotion. They expect peace where there is biological war. But you are no longer like them. You can no longer claim ignorance. You've seen the pattern. You've decoded the code. And that gives you power. The power not to take anything personally. The power to respond with firmness, not fragility. The power to be the man who doesn't crumble before chaos but transcends it. Machiavelli understood this. He knew that true power is not domination through force, but understanding human nature and acting accordingly. Not to please, not to control, but to conquer with intelligence. And that, brother, is your task. Not to change women, not to fight them, not to resent them, but to understand them so deeply that they can no longer disarm you emotionally. Because real respect is earned when she senses that you don't depend on her validation, that you see her, yes, But you don't revolve around her, that you understand her but don't dissolve into her chaos, that you can love without losing your center, give without becoming a servant, stay when she tests and walk away when she stops respecting you. That balance between firmness and compassion, between strategy and connection is what makes you truly masculine. Not muscle, not money, not aggression, but the ability to understand what others ignore and act with a clarity that others lack. This is not an invitation to cynicism, nor to hatred, nor to manipulation. It's an invitation to awaken, to stop being naive, to open your eyes because the world will not adapt to you. Women will not stop testing you. Biology will not apologize. But you can become the kind of man who needs no excuses, who asks for no permission, who does not break. And when you become that man, everything changes. You no longer crawl for attention. You no longer cry for validation. You no longer suffer for not being understood because you're no longer seeking comfort. You're building an empire. You're forging a life that doesn't depend on feminine approval, but on the respect you radiate naturally. And that respect is born from one thing, inner control. So now the decision is yours. Continue being reactive, confused, fragile, or become strategic, grounded, awake. Because the man who understands the feminine fear stops being afraid himself. And when a man loses fear, he becomes inevitable. If this video made you see what no one had ever told you before, share it. Leave your thoughts in the comments and subscribe because this is only the beginning. Here we don't speak of what's politically correct. We speak of what hurts but transforms, of what unsettles but awakens. I'll see you in the next chapter, brother. Stay firm.